I grew up in America, and a small house near Honolulu carried my name like a promise. Its walls were pale sand, the porch faced the ocean, and the front steps warmed by noon. My Aunt Nora left it to me after she passed away. In her will, she wrote, "A woman needs a door she can lock with her own key." I was 19 the first night. I slept there alone. The wind hissed through the palms, the screen door sang when it closed, and for the first time, I felt my life truly belonged to me. Most months, I stayed with my parents on the mainland, in a modest apartment in Seattle. We shared groceries and small jokes, but under our easy talk ran a stronger current. Dad believed in duty and plans. He watched numbers the way other people watch the sky. Mom believed in peace and keeping the family close. I believed in air in quiet rooms and in the right to hold what I had been given. We loved each other, but we did not weigh things on the same scale. My sister, Sarah, married a kind man named Tyler in a simple ceremony. We danced under white lights and drank lemonade from paper cups. The very next day, the talk inside our home changed. It stopped drifting and began to march. It was talk of rent, of interest, of a first home in a city far away. It was the talk of my house near Honolulu, the place with the blue door and the rusted mailbox, because a plan had formed around it without asking me in. One evening, we sat down to dinner, and the air felt tight. Dad tapped the table with 2 fingers, then slammed his palm flat so hard the forks jumped. "She got married and now needs a new place," he shouted. Mom smoothed her napkin, although it was already smooth. Sarah watched a bead of water slide down her glass and said nothing, as if stillness might keep her safe. Heat climbed my face. My hands went still in my lap. They had chosen the path. They wanted to sell my Honolulu house and use the money to buy Sarah a flat in New York. Dad even named the price, as if reading truth from a law book. "We can get at least $420,000, he said. "It's a good deal. It helps the family. We will all feel better when it's done." The sentences sounded tidy, like a row of shirts, and I knew I was meant to hang my feelings beside them and call it order. I did not answer right away. I watched steam lift from the food and curl into nothing. In my head, I stood in the small bedroom in Honolulu, listening to the white fan tick as it turned. I smelled my aunt's wool coat in the closet. Soap, winter, a little salt. I saw the crooked paint stripe on the floor where I once tried to mark my height and laughed at my own hand. The house was not a stack of boards to be traded for a different stack. It held my life the way a bowl holds water. "I'll think about it," I said at last, because those were the safest words I could find. Dad nodded, as if he had won. Mom whispered thank you, without lifting her eyes. Sarah caught my wrist under the table, squeezed once and let go. I rose to clear the plates. I washed them slowly, one by one, and set them down to dry with space between them, as if calm could be arranged the same way. After the dishes, I went to my room and sat on the floor with a blue folder. Inside were the title papers, the letter from the bank, and a copy of Aunt Nora's will. My name appeared again and again, in ink that would not smear. I read every line as if it were new. I ran my finger over the raised seal and felt its ridges. I thought about America spread from ocean to ocean and about how a woman can own a thing and keep it. I thought about Europe as a someday trip, trains, museums, long walks. Not a place to run, just a wish I kept because wishes are a kind of light. In the morning, I did quiet math that belonged only to me. If the house sold for $420,000 and closing costs landed near $18,700, and taxes took their share, how much would remain? Enough, I saw, to buy a small condo in Seattle near the bus line. Enough to put $50,000 in a savings account and write safety on the line. Enough to set aside $5,000 for classes and a new laptop. Enough to tuck $200 in an envelope for Mrs. Miller, my neighbor in Honolulu, to thank her for watering the bougainvillea when I traveled. Numbers do not love you, but they do not lie to you either. They tell you what stands up when the feelings sit down. That evening, I tried to speak with Mom alone. I told her I felt pushed. She said time was moving, and we had to move with it. I asked if we could help Sarah in another way. She said families help with what they have. I said, gently, that the house was mine. She said, gently, that she knew. Her voice trembled, and she asked me not to make things hard. I searched for a reply that would be kind and true at once, and found there was none. So I went into the laundry room and folded a towel until the corners met in a perfect square. I stood there with the warm cloth in my hands and heard Aunt Nora's voice the way I hear the sea on a calm morning. Take your own side when no one else does, she had told me once, with a smile that lit her eyes. I heard the click of my key in the Honolulu lock. I felt the cool brass in my palm. The weight that says yes. A simple truth rose in me and would not sit down. I would not ask. I would not wait. I would make my own plan and follow it. I would call the people I needed to call, sign the papers I needed to sign, and keep my head clear. If anger came, it would break around me like a wave around a rock. If noise rose, I would let it pass like wind through tall grass. I did not know yet who would buy the house or how fast the papers would move. I only knew the door I had to close and the door I would open, and that both doors would be under my hand. The morning after that hard dinner, I opened my laptop and typed real estate agent Honolulu with hands that would not shake. I chose the second name on the page because it felt ordinary and safe. Luke Bryant. His voice on the phone was brisk, almost kind. I told him the house was mine, that I needed a quick, clean sale, and that I wanted the paperwork to move faster than the talk at my parents' table. He asked for photos, a lockbox, and permission to stage. We can list by Thursday, he said. I said yes to everything. When I hung up, I stared at the little light on the router, the one that blinks like a heartbeat, and I felt steady. Luke worked like a clock. He sent a stager named Ava with a truck full of pale throws and quiet art. They folded my aunt's old quilt and set it on the linen chest as if it were a guest of honor. We polished the kitchen sink until it shone. We pulled the blue tape from the porch rail and touched up the paint so the house looked like itself, only brighter. By noon the next day, the listing was live and a stream of messages arrived. A teacher, a nurse, a retired couple from the mainland. The price went up as a number for $115,000, but to me it looked like mornings and shadows, the sound of the screen door, the hum of a small fan. The first open house felt like holding my breath. People walked through with the soft feet of strangers. They opened closets and smiled at the light. I stood outside by the hibiscus and pretended to be another neighbor. On the third day, Luke called me with a voice that held stillness and speed together. We have someone strong, he said. Mark Daniels. Officer. Pre-approved. Cash ready. Wants to close in 10 days. My heart made the small click it makes when a key turns. We met that afternoon. He was off duty, in a gray t-shirt and clean boots, steady eyes, kind mouth. He said he wanted a place near his station where his mother could visit and sit on the porch. I shook his hand. It felt like shaking hands with a decision. We went through terms in the living room, the windows open to the trade wind. Mark offered $415,000, and he asked for a standard inspection and nothing fussy. Luke put the figures in a neat email, estimated closing costs at $13,700, plus recording fees, plus a small credit to the buyer for a loose hinge we both could hear. When the numbers settled, I saw how it would land. After costs and the small credits, I would wire $401,300 to my account in the United States of America. I would keep $10,000 aside for moving and legal help. The rest would go where numbers go, tax lines, the slow machinery of the world. I did not ask anyone for a blessing. I did not wait for anyone to nod. I signed. Keeping the sale quiet felt like building a paper wall that could burn at any spark. I switched my phone to silent and answered emails in the library, where the air smelled like clean dust and old ink. I booked a flight to Honolulu under my own name and told my mother I needed a few days to think. She said she hoped I would think in a family way. I said I would think in an honest way. I closed my bag and slipped my aunt's key into the small pocket I always trust, the one that sits close to the skin. Honolulu greeted me with sunlight that lay flat and warm on my shoulders. The house looked calm, as if it had already accepted its next chapter. I did one last sweep of each room. In the kitchen, I wiped the counters and put a lemon on the window ledge because Aunt Nora used to like that bright spot. In the bedroom, I stood where my bed had stood and thanked the quiet for holding me all these years. I locked the bathroom window, checked the back door, and then stood in the hallway, listening to the house breathe. When Luke arrived with the final papers, I signed each line with a clear hand. We took a photo for the file. Me, the agent, the doorway behind us like a frame. I kept my smile small, the way you do when you're telling the truth to yourself. Mark came by to measure the back room. He had a paint tray and a roller wrapped in plastic. Soft white, he said, tapping the lid. My mother can rest better when the walls are light. He asked if I needed more time to pack the last box. I told him I could be finished by sundown. No rush, he said, but he set the tray down carefully, like someone who understands clocks and hearts. We worked in a kind rhythm, he with his tape measure, me with my stack of folded things. When he left, he nodded at the porch and said, "This place was cared for." I tucked those words in my pocket like a small, clean bill. An hour later, I walked next door with an envelope for Mrs. Miller. She once taught me how to prune the roses without fear. I slid $200 under her door with a note. "Thank you for watching the plants. The house thanks you, too." On my way back, the sky was turning the color of a peach. I stood on the porch and ran my palm along the rail one last time. The wood felt warm, as if it were also saying goodbye. I locked the front door, turned the key twice, and placed it in a small dish for Luke to deliver with the rest. At the bank the next morning, I signed the wire form for $401,300 and watched the teller stamp it. The sound reminded me of a gavel, but softer, without judgment, just a fact. I set aside the $10,000 in a separate account labeled Move and Counsel. I took a photo of the balances, so I could look at them later when doubt tried to knock. I bought a simple coffee and a sandwich and ate both on a bench that faced the street. The air was full of ordinary noise, buses, a bike bell, two boys arguing about a game, and all of it felt like a blessing I could afford. When my plane lifted toward the mainland, I pressed my forehead to the window and watched the island shrink to a small green thought in a bright field. I told myself a simple truth. I had acted. I had made my own path in America, signed my own name, counted my own dollars. Europe could wait, a dream for another season. For now, my life was here, moving forward, and the keys to the next door were already in my hand. 3 days after the sale, I was on the living room floor in the Honolulu house, sealing the last box with clear tape. The room smelled like dust and lemon oil. I had put the keys in a small dish near the door for Luke to collect. The blue door was open to the breeze, but I had set the screen. I was thinking about the flight back to the mainland and a quiet first night in Seattle. Then my father burst through the doorway as if the hinge owed him something. He did not knock. He did not call my name. He saw me crouched by the box, and his face went red. "Why haven't you given us the keys to the house yet?" he shouted. The words hit hard, and then his hand hit harder. The slap stung my cheek and rang in my ear. For a second, the world shrank to a bright point. A voice came from the hallway. "Sir, step back." Mark Daniels, now the owner of the house, stepped out with a paint roller still wrapped in plastic. He had been checking the back room for a soft white coat. He showed his badge, calm and sure, and moved between us. "This is an assault," he said, even and steady. "You're under arrest." My father sputtered. He said it was family business and tried to push past, but Mark's stance did not move. He took my father's wrists, read him his rights in a voice that did not shake, and called it in. I stood there with my hand to my cheek, the tape roll at my knee, feeling 20 years old and 10 years old at the same time. In minutes, a patrol car pulled up to the curb. The sound of the engine felt louder than it was. A neighbor, Mrs. Miller, watched from her porch with a hand over her mouth. The officers came in, spoke to Mark, then spoke to me. They asked if I needed medical help. I asked for water first. One of them, a woman named Officer Reyes, set a paper cup in my hand and said, "You're safe here." America can be loud and rough, but in that moment, the law felt like a hand at my back. The officers took photos of my cheek, the swelling already clear. They looked at the door and the frame where my father had forced it. They photographed that too. I gave my statement slowly because I wanted every word to be clean. I said the house had been sold. I said the buyer stood in the room and had proof. I said my father had tried to push me into giving up the keys, even though they no longer belonged to me. I told them about the phone calls the week before, when he shouted that I was selfish and ungrateful, and that I would regret it. I did not raise my voice. I did not add anything I could not prove. Officer Reyes nodded, wrote, and asked gentle, exact questions. Mark added the bill of sale and his deed as proof of ownership. The paper trail lay flat on the table, and I felt steadier with each sheet. They put my father in the back of the car. He looked at me through the glass and shook his head like I had done something cruel to a stray dog. I felt the old pull in my chest, the one that says you must make peace now, or you will never know quiet again. I stood taller instead. I watched the car pull away. The hibiscus near the porch swayed once and went still. Mark asked if I wanted to sit down, and I did. He set the paint roller on the porch and sat on the step with me, a respectful distance away. You did the right thing, he said. His voice had no heat in it. I'll write the report and file it now. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. Come home, she said, voice tight. We can talk, I said. I would talk, but not in the old way, and not to erase what had happened. Then Sarah called. She cried and asked me to think of Dad's job and the shame of handcuffs. I thought of my cheek and my key and my name on paper. I said I would tell the truth and keep telling it. She said she loved me. I said I loved her, too, but love could not be a door that only opened one way. At the station, I filed the complaint myself. The lobby was bright and a little cold. A victim advocate named Diana met me with a folder and a soft sweater draped over her chair. She told me what to expect: a case number, a first hearing, and the chance to ask for a protection order. We filled out forms together. She asked if I had a safe place to sleep. I said I had already paid for a motel near the airport, $138 for the night, and that Mark would lock up once Luke picked up the keys. Diana gave me a list of counselors and a card with a number I could call at any hour. She slid a glass of water across the table and waited until I had finished it. Before I left, I called a lawyer. Teresa Hall answered on the second ring. She spoke with a quiet strength that made me trust her. She said she could meet me on a video call in the evening and that her retainer was $2,500. I used the money I had set aside for move and counsel, the $10,000 I carved out of the sale, exactly for a day like this. I felt grateful to my past self for planning with a clear head. Numbers do not comfort you, but they hold you up. Back at the house, the light had tilted. Mark walked the hallway and closed the windows I had left open. He placed the keys in a bag with the paperwork for Luke. We stood in the doorway for a moment, the porch between us like a small bridge. There will be a bail hearing, he said. The court will let you know. If anyone contacts you, save every message. I nodded. I told him thank you for stepping in, but he shook his head. It was simple, he said. No one gets to hit you. I carried my last box to the trunk of the rental car. It was not heavy. It held a fan, a quilt, and the small dish where the keys had rested. I set the box down and closed the trunk, hands sure now. I took one last look at the house, the blue door, the warm rail, the porch light that always hummed. I did not say goodbye this time. The house already belonged to someone else, and I belonged to myself. That night at the motel, I pressed a cool cloth to my cheek and watched the numbers change on the tiny digital clock. I wrote down what had happened, every detail, and saved it with the case number. I counted my money, not to calm myself, but to remember I had planned for this. For $101,300 wired home, $10,000 for needs like this, $50,000 saved for safety. I put my phone face down and listened to the quiet. Somewhere across America, people closed doors and locked them and told themselves tomorrow would be better. I told myself the same thing, and I meant it. I did not ask. I did not wait. I chose my side, and I stayed there. Europe could wait for another day. Right now, my whole life was here, and I would not back down. The court felt like winter under a roof. The lights were bright, and the benches were hard, and every sound carried. I sat beside my lawyer, Teresa Hall, and kept my shoulders straight. Across the aisle, my father sat with his attorney, a man who kept smoothing his tie as if the knot were a problem he could fix. The city's lawyer laid out the facts in a calm voice. The sale of the house near Honolulu to Mark Daniels, the forced entry, the slap, the photos Officer Reyes took, the report Mark filed, the complaint I signed. Teresa spoke next. She did not thunder. She used plain words, the kind that hold. She said violence in America is still violence when it happens in a living room, and daughters are not doors you can kick open. Judge Helen Thompson listened with a still face. She asked careful questions. She read my statement twice, lips moving a little on certain lines. When my father's attorney spoke, he called it a family dispute and said feelings were high because the house had been in our memories for years. He said my father had meant only to talk. He did not mention the red print of a hand on my cheek. When the judge asked if my father understood the sale was legal and final, he looked down and said yes. When she asked if he hit me, he paused too long and then said, "I lost my temper." The words lay heavy on the table between us. I stood to speak, not to add fire, but to stand in my own space. I said my name and my city, Seattle, and I said I am a woman who owns what she is given and what she earns. I said I loved my family, but I would not be pushed from a door I had the right to lock. I said this was not about winning. It was about safety and truth. Then I sat and folded my hands together, palms warm, fingers still. The room seemed to draw one breath and hold it. Judge Thompson spoke at last. She said the act was what it was, assault. She said a house is property, but a daughter is a person, and the law knows the difference. She gave my father a heavy sentence, 9 months in county jail, a $5,000 fine, and a 2-year order to stay away from me. She added a note about a class on anger and a warning that the order would be enforced. The gavel struck, and the sound was clean and final, like a door that closes true. I did not cry. I let out the breath I had been holding and felt my feet on the floor. Afterward, in the hallway, Teresa touched my elbow and said, "You did well." Mark Daniels waited a few steps back, out of the way, and gave a small nod. He had come on his lunch break from the station, the new deed in his folder, his life already busy with repairs and paint. Luke Bryant texted to ask if the court needed any more papers from the sale. It did not. Sarah sent a message that began with "I'm sorry" and ended with "I love you." I saved it. Mom did not write. I understood. Love sometimes needs a quiet room before it can speak again. I walked out into the light and felt the outside air as if it were new. I booked a flight to Seattle for that night and opened the notes on my phone to list what came next. The list was simple and held to numbers because numbers help me stand. I would take $210,000 and buy a small condo close to my job. I had already seen one near a bus line and a small park. I would expect $18,000 in closing and fees and plan for that. I would keep $50,000 in a savings account marked safety. I would keep $5,000 for a night class because new skills are another kind of key. I would send Mom a letter with $300 for groceries and the number of a counselor, the advocate, Diana, had given me. The rest would stay where it was, steady and boring, which is how I like my money to be. The condo in Seattle was on the 3rd floor of a quiet building with a view of a maple tree. The price was fair, and the kitchen was small but clean, and the living room made more sense to me than any room had in months. I signed the papers with a calm pen and paid the $18,000 in closing without flinching, because I had planned for it. I moved in with a couch, a desk, and one plant I named Melissa. The first night I slept there, the room held a soft hum from the heater, and I felt a peace I had almost forgotten. In the morning, I made coffee, opened the blinds, and watched the light bend across the floor like water. It felt like a promise I could keep. I enrolled in an evening class on project management at a nearby college and paid the $5,000 tuition from the fund I had set aside. The class met twice a week. The teacher, a woman named Ruth, spoke in clear steps and asked for weekly plans we could defend with simple reasons. It fits the way my mind works. At my job, I asked for more hours and then for a new task. I brought a small notebook and wrote what I learned each day, not in fancy lines, but in short notes I could use. I told myself that every hour I added to my skills was a brick in a wall that would not tip. On a quiet Sunday, I wrote the letter to Mom. I kept it short. I said I hoped she was eating well. I told her the judge had made her decision and that I would follow it. I put $300 in the envelope and the counselor's card, and a line that said, "When you're ready, I'm here." I did not write about New York or the flat they had wanted for Sarah. Some doors need time before they can be opened again. I also wrote to Sarah and told her I would meet her in a public place when she was ready, and that Mark had been fair and kind about the house, and that I hoped she and Tyler were settling into married life with patience. She sent back a heart and a photo of their new couch. It was gray and plain and good. Sometimes, at night, I take the jar from the shelf and look at the label that says Europe. I drop in a small bill when I can, $5, $10, because it is not about the trip, not now. It is about remembering I have choices and time. America is wide, and my life is here, but I like the feeling of a plan with a horizon. I keep my doors locked and my windows clean. I keep my accounts balanced. I keep my voice steady when I say my own name. And when I leave my condo in the morning, I touch the key in my pocket and feel how it answers me, small and sure, metal and promise at once. This is the shape of my new start. Clear lines, honest words, and a hand on my own key. I did not wait for permission. I protected myself. I told the truth in a room where truth matters. And with every dollar I save and every door I close behind me, I keep building a life that is mine.